And we're live.
Welcome to the show.
Hey, hey.
All right, got a question for you, Spence.
Yep.
In the future, 25 to 50 years from now, what are our grandkids going to look back on? Like the things that we used to do today, what are they going to look back on and think was just completely nuts? It's not going to be, what they're doing in that day, but they're going to look back and be like, can't believe you were doing that.
Yeah.
Let's
Uh,
list off let's list off like 4 to 5 things.
right now, oh, you want to start with a list rather than hit each one?
You can like up to you. You could dive into each one.
Okay, okay. Well, let me name some. You know what? Let's do the list so everybody has an
All right.
idea of what we're talking about. So, an example of what I think when people look back and they're gonna say, "Wow, that's so nuts! I cannot believe that people actually did that back then." The first one that comes to mind, and maybe because it feels relevant to me, is that they'll look back and say, "I can't believe people used to work 5 days a week." They'll look at that the same way we used to look at like kids working in like the late 1800s and be like, "Wow, why did they need to work 5 days a week?" So that's one.
Hmm.
Another one that I think we'll look back on. Hopefully, I mean this is more optimistic. Is like, wow. Well, depends on whether you like driving a car or not. But did you know you actually have to drive a car, like literally point the wheel and stuff like that? I think that's some of the you'll hear some of those quotes in the far future. So that's another one. Uh, I'll give you maybe like one or two more. I think another one that I was discussing or thinking about, Max, was hey, they'll say, hey, did you know that medication was made for everybody? Like it was just mass produced for everybody and not personalized for every individual person. And sometimes they really wouldn't work because of that. Like to me, that's really that's another optimistic one. I think, right? Just to think back that we'll have this personalized medicine.
Versus like a shotgun approach that we have now.
Yeah, 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 exactly. And probably part of that will be like, can you believe that they poked you to get a bunch of blood from you to go ahead and check your health? People are like, whoa, that's terrible. That's crazy.
Interesting. Okay.
That, and I think, I mean, another one that comes to mind there is, and this one's really, now this one's maybe less optimistic, but as population expands, as our societies change, another one that we'll think about is like owning a home. Like people will think like that's as urban density increases and the idea of an individual owning land in the far. I mean, this one might be more far future. Our grandkids might think that that's crazy when it comes from like from the point of view of like sustainability and community, right? Because maybe it's more of like a community owned thing. Oh, that sounds like communism, but I'm not saying state owned. Maybe it's like they're gonna look back. They're gonna live in a future where it's like Spencer, Max, and five other people own a property that they all live on, right? Something like that. And that gets more normalized versus we're of one family and we buy and we just buy a house. And you might think it's crazy right now, but think about the cost of purchasing a house. And remember that everybody who buys a house today is only banking on the fact that the value of that home goes up.
Okay. Very hippie of you, that last one. I
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It is.
And then I'll throw in one more in there on the list. I don't know what you said that made me think of this, but just the fact that we eat animals, right? Animals that
Yes.
are killed and then we just consume them and all of the consequences in that supply chain. Okay, so I think those are five. You're four plus that one, five. Okay, so working 5 days a week, driving actual vehicles, um, a spray and pray approach to medicine, right? Like not personalized medicine, and the fact that people own homes, own property in general, and then also just eating animals. Okay, want to start from the top?
Yeah,
Dive
yeah.
into each
Let's do
one.
it.
Okay, so working 5 days a week. Why do you see it? What do you see it transitioning to?
Um, so in the near future, I can see it transitioning into a 4 day work week. Right. I think it'll be just a gradual change. I see it little by little, just become like a 3 day work week eventually, and then maybe just like a non dedicated. I think we'll get to 3 day work week, and then I can imagine it again. This is all just speculative thinking, not based on any evidence, just what we know and understand. We'll turn it. It'll turn into a work whenever you can type of system, right? It's like You've got a job, you've got a goal for a week, you work when you can. And the reason of that, probably some of the reasons for that, um, it'll probably be because of AI automation, right? That's kind of a given. I think the other thing that comes with that is just having an abundance of output, right? When you can automate things to work 24/7. It's like, imagine, here's an example. Imagine you just have you're doing this one task where you're a farmer, just one farmer. And you're doing this 24/7. You get a second farmer, and as that second farmer, you both are making mistakes and learning from each other, or learning from one another, right? You're every day working 24/7, working the mistakes you make, the other farmer knows. Now imagine doing that. 99 farmers are all interconnected and understanding and making mistakes and learning together. That's what the machine learning does, and the output of that should, if all goes well, give abundance. And what happens with abundance? We have we don't have to work as hard, I think, right? It's for certain things. If we have AI for farming, for housing, for trade and goods and services, and then mix that with the amount of entertainment that we have out now. I think it's just another aspect. We think about work, but think about the entertainment that we have today. We have endless content, digital content, endless movies, films, TV shows, video games, music. People are trying to find new ways to entertain themselves constantly, and AI will also fuel that to create new content. So we'll have a lot of free time to enjoy that content. I don't know if the word will be enjoy. Maybe it's keep us busy, enjoying and consuming content, having freedom to go explore things, while AI ultimately becomes this thing that outputs in abundance the things that we need from a day-to-day perspective. So that's why I see us like just won't make any sense to work 5 days a week. They'll be like, that's insane. The reason, sorry, and I'm going on a tangent, but I just want to add one last thing, is we worked 5 days a week in the past because that was based on, I forget what it was based. I think it was based on like the factory hours, or I think that we used to work even longer hours, but we cut them to 9 to 5 because of laws. And we didn't have as many things to entertain us back then, as many hobbies to entertain us, right? Unless you were really rich, like a Benjamin Franklin, that could go ahead and explore and invent things. But now we all have that ability to do so. So that's why I think it's kind of antiquated, and it'll be reduced. What do you think, Ben?
Very interesting. I agree with you on most points. Particularly the hive brain, right? Where the reason AI is so powerful, if you just look at, let's use an example of why AI is powerful and how it connects to hive brain. So if a Tesla in Wisconsin gets into an accident, all of the Teslas that are driving around in New York City immediately know that accident happened, and they learn how to avoid it. And so in the future, the collective brain as a whole is improved.
Yep.
That's really cool, right? That's the fundamental advantage that technology and AI will always have over human beings. And I think that's very powerful. I also agree with you that as time went on, if you look at, I was just kind of Googling something. If you look at it throughout history, how if you look at history, the reduction of the hours and the days that people worked has obviously gone down, right? I'm reading here, like by the mid-19th century, it was common for workers to log 70 hours, 6-day work weeks. And then you had, and that obviously became lower and lower because, the Industrial Revolution, it sort of helped people with doing those tasks, especially the repetitive tasks that they kept on doing, and made it a little bit easier, a little bit faster, a little bit more efficient. As a result, output increased, and so you didn't need as many people putting in the hours. I think that's just a natural progression, right? Throughout history, we keep seeing that, and now that we have AI really coming into the picture, that's just the next obvious step, right? So logically, this flows, this makes sense. To your point about the next step being 4-day work week, how could it not be, right? All of the tests that are think about all the tests that are being done across the globe, not to mention in the US for 4-day work weeks. I'm still curious and not super convinced about the data in terms of like all the positive as well as the negative consequences.
Hmm.
But we'll see, right? The tests they're fairly recent. We need to see it at a larger scale. Can 4-day work weeks actually work,
Hmm.
right? And will that model be people work 4 days, 10 hours a day, or is it you work 8 hours a day for 4 days and the output is still the same or even higher, right? So
Right.
those are kind of interesting. I would argue against 10-hour days because people for the most part
Short,
can barely. I think it'll
shorter,
be
but 10
shorter
hour
days.
days. Yeah, yeah. You know,
But I
shorter. So less days and shorter days.
I think that will ultimately be where we go. But right
Okay.
now, people are kind of thinking, well, what if we work 4-hour days? Does that mean, because people are stuck with the model of we need to have 40 hours, and to hit 40 hours, if you have 4 days, obviously it's 10 hours a day. I don't think that's right. And
Right.
the reason I don't think that will ultimately work is because even with an 8-hour day, how productive are people?
Yes. Yes.
Like 3 hours a day,
Yeah.
4 hours a day tops, right?
Yeah.
And then you kind of you get distracted, especially if you're in the office and you kind of find
And
other
you see
things to do,
people.
and you see people. So I agree with you. I think the very immediate future, like much sooner than people anticipate, will be the 4-day work week.
Hmm.
I do think after that it'll go to 3, and then I'm totally tracking with you when you say that working will essentially be a choice,
Yep.
right? You will choose to work for whatever benefit. Maybe it's, I don't know, health benefits, or like you want to feel productive, you want to have a purpose as a human being. I do think that work will be a choice. I think universal basic income is going to come into play, something we
Yep.
spoke about on another episode. Um, so yeah, we have the industrial revolution. Now we have the AI revolution. I think the consequences are pretty clear.
Well, it
Okay.
makes me well no yeah, but it makes me think of one more thing that you as you say that though as that happens, is there a I almost feel like when I think about how much content is out, I'm talking about TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Netflix, video games. Now, content will also be generated by AI. Will
Mhm.
content be the thing that consumes our time when we're not working? For example, is it a scale? Like working and content used to take time, right? Movies to get made, music to be made. More content is being built, generated, we're working less. Is there a again? It may sound like some sort of a conspiracy theorist, but is ultimately the abundance of content that we can consume a way to keep us busy when we're not working? Think about the redditor in the basement who doesn't go to work because he still lives at his mom's basement, right? Or like he's got video games he plays online for hours. He's got Reddit to explore forever and have comments and get arguments on. Technically speaking, he doesn't really need to make that much money to get by. He can eat his microwavable food. It's very cheap. Got water, got a shower, got shelter. Like the incentive is
It,
pretty low. And
yeah.
then add to the fact when you start to introduce, let's say AI companions, romantic companions, AI romantic companions on virtual reality. What
Yeah.
I mean, what is your incentive at that point? You're basically replicating what incentivizes a lot of people to go out there and innovate and work. So it's just kind of an interesting dynamic to think about too, and that's why if you look at those the anti-work subreddit, a lot of them are, I mean, generalizing, a lot of people are this kind of redditor that's like in the basement. Actually, they had him on a newscast. I think they made some sort of noise and they had an interview. They interviewed some guy who's like a moderator on that anti-work subreddit, and it was exactly this character that I'm saying. Obviously, they chose the worst person. I think they put him on Fox News
Of
of all
course.
things too.
Yeah.
But it's just funny that the two extremes get together, and I don't know. I just think I wonder if that's the direction we're going.
It could be. Yeah. It's definitely interesting. So you're more concerned about how people are going to stay busy, right? How are they going to fill the hours of the day that they're awake? I agree. I mean, we could also think about the positives, right? Like, maybe are people going to travel more? Are they going to discover new cultures? But then when I say travel, is that going to turn into physical travel? Like today, you'd fly, you pack, you fly somewhere, and you go there, or is it all virtual reality based, right? If you
Right.
slap on a pair of goggles and it's indistinguishable from, like, today, Google image is pretty static, right? Like,
Hmm.
but you could also tap your arrow and you can kind of explore neighborhoods. There's
Yes.
websites that let you listen to, there's a really cool one I found a long time ago, kind of off topic, but it let you find local radio stations that are playing live, like in Abu Dhabi, right?
Yes,
And you
yes.
could
I
just kind
have
of
that
tap
actually. I
into it.
have something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
it's
yeah,
pretty
yeah,
cool. So that's a way of like exploring, of traveling.
yeah.
There's also, how are how's the spiritual part of people's lives going to be fulfilled, right? Like, I, is it like reading the Bible, or is it, again, like, is it all virtual reality based? Is it or like you're attending church, or something like that through virtual, which is actually an interesting transition that we saw after COVID. People weren't going to physical church anymore; they were going and just joining, like,
Yeah.
Zoom groups.
Right.
Um,
But the more you do that, the less you need like actual expense. Like your expenses drop. The more
exactly.
you lean
Yeah.
into that, you know what I mean?
It's
Like
much. Yeah.
it's
Go
like the
ahead.
extreme version of me saying, you know what, let's not go out today. We can just stay in and watch a movie.
That's why
Or
movie theaters are suffering. Exactly. Yeah.
right, or it's restaurants are going on dates is kind of expensive. Just go on virtual reality. And, I'm good. Like that's it's
Like, eat rehydrated space food and just, watch a movie, or like you build the date around you. You want to be at a cafe? Beep, boop, boop.
yeah.
You're in it.
Right, and then also think about all those unemployed people. If you have this content that keeps you busy, you don't feel as angry. Maybe right, you don't feel as we have nothing. We've got to go fight back. Like you've got worlds at your fingertip. Just plug in.
Yeah, totally agree with you. Okay, so that was a good one.
Yeah.
What was your next one? Driving, physically driving.
Yeah. They'll look back and say, like, can you believe like you actually had to drive your car, point the wheel, and move the knobs? How insane is that? I bet they got into a lot of accidents. So
Do
I
you know how
think
many?
yeah,
Go
tell
ahead,
me.
go ahead, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say yeah, like I don't think we're there yet. I think we're taking the baby steps there though. I think we've got obviously most people have heard of Tesla's autopilot capabilities. A lot of cars are also implementing that are not Teslas. But we've seen accidents, we've seen them go wrong, but I think that is the ultimate goal that we're going to go get to,
Absolutely.
without a doubt. I mean, ultimately, AI fits into this too, right? It's almost like this is why AI is such a
As tentacles and everything.
yeah, exactly. It's touching everything you do, so disruptive, and it's one of the biggest things that we're going to see evolve in our lifetime, and like to be able to that hive mind calculate exactly how every car should be. I almost think this one ties into like what I meant with the houses. I think car ownership might even disappear in the far future.
For sure.
You don't need to own the car. It'll almost be like you step out and it's almost like private public transportation in the sense of maybe you could own the car. Like I think that'll be I could imagine it being this. Phase 1, cars drive themselves. Right? Phase 2, cars optimize the way they drive themselves everywhere. So it's almost like one giant train, right? Like you connect them to each other, boom, you get to the place where you need to get in the most optimal way. With your own private car, I think phase 3 ultimately will be like you don't even need to own it. It just runs on a system. Whenever you need to go anywhere, you hop into your private little capsule and it can be like it'll be all mostly digital, that it's all customized to what you need anyway, with all the features that you're subscribed to. You won't not just purchase, you're subscribed to the elite version of your automated transport vehicle. You get in there and you've got your warm seats that get activated because you purchased that subscription, and it gets you to where you need to get to eventually. So I think it goes from being like private vehicle to almost like this kind of hybrid mix. Shared.
Yeah, and again, when you're in the car, to your point about having a lot of content available, think how much more content people are going to consume, right, inside
In the
that
car.
car. You're no longer driving. You're just sitting around. You're like, oh, I'm on TikTok, or I'm watching Disney Plus, or anything. Our kids are entertained. That's really interesting. To your earlier point about accidents, do you know how many people die in the United States from traffic accidents? Yes.
No, I'm sure it's like in the top 10, top 5 most top killer though. Let me see.
The insurance, I got it up. The Insurance Institute for Highway Safety in 2021 in the United States, 42,939 deaths occurred.
Holy
So
cow.
43,000 people died. I don't want to say because they were driving, but you can kind of tie the thread there. And that's that's a good number of people, right?
That's
That's
a
a lot
whole
of families
town.
that are
That's a
that's a lot of that's a lot of families that are impacted. Those are lives that are kind of destroyed. So those people will be saved. You mentioned another interesting point, which was Tesla has some accidents. I think people incorrect, and I agree. I think people incorrectly assume that if they're fully autonomous vehicles, that there will be no accidents. I don't think that's the goal, and
Agreed.
nor do I think that's the metric to truly measure for success. I think it's what is the reduction
Mm-hmm.
of deaths, needless deaths, right, because of autonomous vehicles.
It's painful. It's painful though. I think what people find painful in that statement though is that it's out of their control. There's the illusion that if they're doing it themselves, they made the mistake and they have the control to potentially avoid it.
Isn't it? I agree. Isn't it nuts though that let's just describe what driving a car is like today for
Yeah.
a second. I'm sure I'm sure most people are familiar with it, but there's only one driver's test that you have to take.
Yeah.
In order to prepare for that test, you take, I don't know, 2 lessons that mostly teach you how to parallel park, which is another thing that's probably going to go away. It's going to be a completely lost skill, even in the next few years. Cars already basically park for you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you take that test, and then you get into this like multi-ton metal box with other people on the road, and you just start flying at 50, 60, 70 miles per
It's
hour,
pretty insane. Man.
trying to stay between these two painted lines, not get into each other's lanes, and smack into each other. The fact that we risk our lives that much with that activity is absolutely nuts. And I think people are going to look back at that and be like, I cannot believe you actually made it to today and you're still alive. Like, that's an immense amount of risk.
Yeah, and like just think about how many incompetent drivers there are. Like, I guess it just took a while to really for that to really kick in. Like, just there's so many incompetent drivers. We miraculously make it through because it's there are some people that should not be driving out there, and any
Especially drinking and driving. Think about like
drinking and driving
the other
is
states.
crazy. Like, yeah, outside of New York, like Florida, places that have nightlife, like Florida. We Uber there. We Uber to the bar. We Uber yeah, but like I feel like that's not always the case. We firsthand experienced that. Come on.
I did not, but I can see why other people.
No, not drinking and driving ourselves, but like we've been in a car with somebody who's.
Oh, absolutely.
That's
sure.
what I mean. Yeah,
How can you not?
Yeah.
Especially when you're a kid, right? Like,
Right.
How are you going to get home? Uber wasn't around, so like, I would almost argue that Uber saved a lot of lives simply by giving someone an opportunity to not drink and drive.
Right, 100%, exactly. Like I've been in cars where I'm like, I don't know if I should be in this car.
Yeah, you're like triple buckle up.
Yeah, miraculously, thankfully, I've made it through. But yeah, it's crazy, and just like I don't know, like think about people's eye-hand coordination. And just like there's a lot of people that are not very coordinated in their driving. And it's just
Not at all. It's like, oh, I'm turning, and you're like all the way in. You're 3 lanes over by the time you try to change.
Yeah, it's like, do you ever see somebody get out of the car and they're just like, kind of like can't even like walk right, and you're like, what? I don't think you. This is terrible.
Yeah. And I mean, it really is like so. Okay, so you take one test, and then we all just kind of intuitively trust each other to not smack into each other. But then you never take another test. Mm-hmm. You just think that you improve over time, which I guess is true. But on the other end of that, it's kind of sad that as you get older, it's taken away from you, right? Like, oh, you can no longer pass the vision test. Sorry, you can't drive anymore, and you kind of lose that independence. And so I think, especially for the aging population that we're going to have, I think self-driving vehicles are going to give back that independence to people, right? Because not everybody can Uber everywhere.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. By the way, that brings up an interesting point about older people, and like, wouldn't you then want to be like in a city center or like somewhere in Europe, a walking city, like in this scenario? Like, you don't want to be in like a suburban, like a place where you have to drive out of your house if you're old, right? At that point.
What do you mean?
Well, if you're so old, like for example, if you're 89, you're 90 or something, 90 plus
You're
today.
saying today or in the future?
Today.
Oh yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And then you mentioned another point. Oh, about owning the vehicle ownership. I agree with you. You know, and I think that was Uber and Lyft. Like that was their ultimate vision, which was, well, we're heading towards the sharing economy in a lot of places. Like tools, right? Like, do I really need a leaf blower or anything like that? Or do I need a snowmobile? Why can I snowmobile like snow blower? Why can I just rent that?
Mm-hmm.
Like from my neighbor. Why does each of one of us on this block need a snow blower? Why can't we just share it, right? And so I think overall we're heading towards the sharing economy. Vehicles are no different.
Mm-hmm.
Why should you have to buy a vehicle, especially um, as the price of Uber goes down? That was an interesting sound. So hear this out. So I think that the price of Uber will significantly decrease as autonomous vehicles come into production, right? So let's say they adopt the Teslas, and all of a sudden you don't need to pay drivers, you don't have as many accidents, and so insurance rates also decrease. I think that price will eventually go from $60 for an Uber ride to $10.
Mm-hmm.
That's much more affordable, and so now you have so many more people starting to use this service, and it and then you layer it on top of things like in New York City we have this congestion tax that just came into effect, which is bugging a lot of people purposefully, right?
Mm-hmm.
They want to reduce the number of vehicles that are driving through New York City, which in reality means ownership. Owners of those vehicles should find
Drop.
another way of getting
Oh,
around,
yeah.
and it'll drop as a result. So yeah, I think that vehicle ownership is going to go down, and it really makes you think like, okay, what are the second order effects of that? How is that going to impact car manufacturers like GM?
Mm-hmm.
All of these cars. Like, will people stop buying as many vehicles? What's going to happen to all of their stocks? Topic for another day, but something
Yeah.
to ponder on.
Big
How
time.
much time we got?
And they're gonna lobby against that, by the way. But yeah, we've got like 3 minutes really, but we can.
Okay, let's pick the last two. So non-personalized medicine
Yeah.
and maybe eating animals.
Yes.
Start
Yes.
with the
Yes.
medicine
Yes.
one.
Yes. Okay. Cool. So I think the medicine one is this is already emerging little by little, right? Especially with people doing genetics testing and getting all this data that they're collecting. Obviously, we know about 23andMe and how people are kind of hesitant about the data breach and stuff. But I think that'll only continue in the future generations. And big data and AI can take all of that genetic makeup data that we couldn't crunch as humans, our human brains could, and actually find patterns on an individual level and start to then make prescriptions just for you, exactly for your for what your needs are, right? How your body will react, your DNA will react, your genetics will react. And I think this is emerging technology that'll be huge, big, very disruptive, and it's gonna really bridge the gap in quality, and people will never go back from this. I think our kids would be like, I can't believe we just took this umbrella medicine to just solve for that just apply to everybody. Like take some, I don't know, like no, that's a bad example. Like take some ibuprofen for your headaches, but in reality, we've got one that's exactly for your genetic makeup, and it'll go away with no side effects. Side effects will be a thing that'll be minimized and reduced. Deaths from drugs as well. So that's why I see that being something that they'll look back and be like, wow, that's crazy that they took that. Just kind of how we look back at people used to take cocaine or heroin for medication.
Yeah, I also think that a fascinating branch of that is, and really what people are going to think was nuts, is the fact that you just went to your doctor once or twice a year for just that annual checkup, just to make sure that you're not dying from anything immediate, right? But now you have things like Aura Ring, right? Like continuous observations of what's
Preventative
happening
care.
inside your body. Preventative care. It's a very different different approach to medicine. It's prevention versus treatment,
Yep.
right? Those are two very different philosophies on how you approach medicine, and even today, different countries are approaching that differently. But isn't that crazy that just like once a year, like you have this, you have like a lump on your body, and all of a sudden you go to the doctor, but
It's too late.
and it's too late, of course, by that point, or you think,
Or
ah,
not too
no,
late, but
it'll go away. It's just it's
right.
something inflamed,
It's too
right?
reactive. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, and it is, and it's not continuous enough. And I think that's the fundamental difference of like having an Apple Watch or having an Aura Ring. It's that you have insight into what's happening in your body at a much more frequent timetable,
Yep.
and also a lot of the tests that became available that you can do at home that you no longer have to go to the doctor for, right?
Yep.
Like the first one that really changed this was and that was taken away from doctors was just being able to see if you're pregnant, right? Like a pregnancy test. Before you used to have to go to the doctor, have to go through like this like the walk of shame to like figure it out for a lot of people, and now you could take that at home. You have diabetes, or like pre-diabetes, you could take that at home. There's like so many different kits that you can just order that will tell you on a continuous basis how you're doing, and you don't have to go to the doctor. There's a whole political kind of like drama happening around that because you're essentially taking money away from doctors and from insurance companies, and that's why they lobby so aggressively against these home kits, which is could be a totally separate topic. But I agree with you. Today we're taking this very like spray and pray approach to medicine, or like shotgun approach to medicine, as I called it. I think it will be much more specific to you as an individual. You do have to think about, though, I'll leave this to whoever listens to this, to think about what is the consequence of people being healthier, living longer, just what happens to the planet, what happens to our resources, right? All of the second and third order effects of people just, not people living longer, right? Just think about that, just like that one statement. What happens?
Yeah. Speaking of that, it makes me wonder, like, can we get to a point where we can live even longer? Like, I heard that with health advancements, we'll probably likely be able to live till 130 as an average age span. But what happens when we find that we can live, reverse aging? Do the older generations get selfish and say, I'm sticking around as long as I want? Like I'm sticking around till I'm not ready for death. I'm staying here till I'm like 500. That'll be an interesting world to imagine. So just think about that.
It is, but the immediate it is interesting. The immediate thought is going to be the again, it becomes a have and have nots kind of world, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, you can live to 150, but you have to spend $50,000 at minimum to get there, or 100,000, or 200, $500,000 to get there,
and have money to live on,
and have money to live on. Most importantly, to make it last through all those years. Again, what happens to all of the? I mean, there's been movies made about this a long time ago. What happens in that world, right? Is there more and more division between wealth? So that's kind of interesting. And then lastly, I guess we could just talk about this quickly.
Yep.
Eating animals, right? The fact, so if you look at how it used to be done, like we look at people and sort of like, I don't want to say caveman, but somewhere between caveman and today, where people used to just hunt their own food, like go out, actually physically hunt for it, kill it, eat it, like skin it, eat it. And we're like, okay, that's kind of bizarre. It's like, no, we don't do that today. We just go to the store, we get these pre-sliced, pre-cut pieces of meat or like chicken legs, and we just cook them. I think that in the future, people are going to look at us and be like, ew, you disgusting humans. You beast. You beast, you savage. You used to just go out and just like eat and like cook this meat and consume it. I think I think this is like within 25, definitely within 50 years.
Oh, wow. Sooner than I thought. Okay, yeah?
Yeah. My guess is that we're just moving away from meat, man. I think people are very quickly realizing, like, even just something as simple as methane, right, from cows, from their farts, right? Like that's ruining the planet. Just like everything that we do to animals, it's kind of like it's not sitting well with people. There's been a lot of content produced around this topic. And so I don't think we're gonna ultimately go for a plant-based diet. I think people just like the flavor, and it's hard to let go of meat.
But lab grown.
But lab grown,
I think
yeah. I
lab
think
grown would be
lab
the one.
grown, yeah. I think one of the consequences of this, somewhere in between meat flavor and plant, is mushroom based. I think mushroom is gonna take
Big
off
time, yeah.
big time. It already is. There's quite a few companies that are producing like almost indistinguishable mushroom based products. Very cool. Impossible Meat was obviously, like Beyond Meat, all of them, but
They're disruptors. I consider them disruptors.
they're disruptors. But it's just so expensive and it's so difficult. They haven't had the best success.
And healthy also. Like, I think the health aspect of it, I don't think they're that healthy.
Yeah, again, like if you look at health, just like eating meat is not great. There's been a lot of data that is focused on this. I encourage people to kind of do their own research, but it's hard to go full plant based, But I do think that lab grown, and it has like the right things injected into it that do make us healthier. That's kind of the sweet spot, because I think you still need to have good flavor. I think it's going to be hard for us to let go of meat completely, but it's like it's interesting to see how far we've come, but it's far more interesting to think about the future and what people are going to think we're doing today. That's just completely bizarre.
Yeah.
These are good points.
And
like
mix that in with personalized nutrition, and we'll see what we get. That's interesting. Hey, give me a protein that has my genetic needs, and just don't look like an animal, but it'll have that same flavor. It'll be interesting. We'll see.
Good stuff.
Right.
You want to wrap it here?
Let's wrap it up. Yeah, sounds good. So
nice.
We'll talk to you guys soon. I hope you enjoyed looking at the different topics of what we think people, our grandkids, really will look back at our time and just be like, wow, they were completely nuts.
Let's wrap it here.
All right. Bye.